In a recent firmware update, TE introduced a new feature to the OPZ that gives users more control over the inputs on the unit. The input also allows users the ability to toggle monitoring on an incoming USB audio signal from a host device. This is a great improvement over the previous input selection process. So let's take a look at how this input selection feature works. First note, input selection could only be done while the OPZ is in sequencer mode. If you press and hold screen on the top of the OPZ, you may already know that the sequencer lights will animate to show you the battery level remaining on the device. However, if we look closely at the minor keys, we now see a few that are partially illuminated, specifically 1 through 3 and 0. These represent your inputs available on the unit. 1 is the built-in microphone, 2 is the 1/8" TRRS microphone input, and 3 is the incoming USB audio signal. While still holding the screen button, we can select between the 3 input sources. By pressing an input button, we will toggle the input on and off, and you will see the light get brighter to confirm the input is engaged. Note, you can only have one input engaged at a time. And the good news is one of these 3 inputs can be monitored simultaneously while the OPZ sequencer is playing. And it gets better. There's also parameters that can be adjusted to the incoming input signal. The buttons at the top of the OPZ are the controls for the inputs. Here's an easy way to remember the shortcuts. The project and mixer buttons are for volume, the metronome is for effects, and the screen button is for input selection. If we then press and hold screen and press number 1, we get the built-in mic. You will see the LED next to the mic illuminate green when it's engaged. While the OPZ is vertical, you will see the input level down the sequencer lights. You can adjust the mic's gain by pressing the project and mixer buttons, respectively. More on this in a bit. If we press and hold screen and press the metronome button, we will toggle through effects that are applied to the input signal. If we look closely at the encoder light, we can see them change when we press the metronome button, going from 1 to 2 to both, then back to dark. This represents which effects are being applied to the signal. Effect 1, Effect 2, Effects 1 and 2, and then a clean signal. You can adjust the corresponding encoders to adjust the wet-dry effect on the input signal. And if we play the OPZ, we can see that the input is active while the device plays. It's important to note that the gyro inside the OPZ will change the mode of the unit. When it's vertical, it's in microphone mode, and we can adjust the input gain signal with the project and mixer buttons. Laying the unit horizontally flat will default to sequencer mode. In this orientation, we can adjust the input signal gain via the screen button. If we press and hold the screen button and then the project or mixer buttons, we can adjust the input gain of each of the 3 inputs. The sequencer LEDs will now show the gain level with a single green LED, 1 being the lowest and 16 being the highest. Let's show this on input 2. We have a Shure mic with an 1/8" TRRS connector, which will plug into the OPZ, and headphones can be plugged into the Shure mic. Press and hold screen and select number 2. The LED on the side of the unit will illuminate red. Our outboard mic now behaves similarly to our built-in mic. If we play the OPZ, we can use the mic at the same time, and we can adjust the input gain and apply effects. Input 3 will toggle to the USB audio signal, and the same parameters can be adjusted to this input. Now here's where something interesting happens. While holding screen, we see 0 is dimly lit. 0 also represents USB audio monitoring. But the difference here is that when it's engaged, it will only monitor USB audio, and the OPZ sequencer will be muted. So pressing number 3 will allow USB audio to be monitored while the OPZ is playing, and engaging number 0 will only monitor USB audio. So how does this relate to the OPZ sampler? Well, we mentioned that the input selection needs to occur while the OPZ is in sequencer mode. You'll need to select a source you want to sample before you enter sample mode. With the user sample pack created, we can now enter sample mode. The input is now available to sample. Note, pressing play will toggle monitoring on in sample mode, but the input is already being monitored via the screen input selection feature. However, by pressing play and engaging monitoring in sample mode, we now see the input signal on the sequencer steps, and we can adjust its gain by holding Shift and selecting steps 1 through 16 on the sequencer. What else? The firmware update also brought several bug fixes that included a fix to corrupt and missing files, as well as a fix to drone note triggering. Additionally, MIDI-CC was added for changing patterns. And TE said that octave shifting is now available on all tracks. Lastly, TE labeled the input selection feature as a beta feature, and it may be subject to change. However, this is a welcome feature, and hopefully it will only get better with the next firmware update. Okay, thanks for watching. If you learned something or found this video helpful, please give a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Your support counts. Thanks.